Zdravo Mahalo, kako si? Nadam se da ide dobro sa tenisom. Sara jo, ćao Sara. Prijatno iznenađenje vidjeti tebe na ovom live-u. Puno pozdrava i svaka čast na svemu što radiš. Veliki pozdrav za sve i hvala što ste došli. Imamo još jednu epizodu druženja. Ova će večerašnja biti na engleskom jeziku sa Šervinom. Ovo je, mislim, naša treća po redu epizoda self-mastery projekta, tako da ću krenuti da pričam na engleskom jeziku za sve one ljude koji ne razumeju engleski jezik. Žao mi je, ali također ću biti redovan sa ovim druženjima i na engleskom i na srpskom jeziku, 1 do 2 put nedeljno. Nadam se da vam se svideo intervju sa profesorom doktorom Draganom Ivanovom. Mislim da je to bio jedan od boljih live-ova koji sam uradio i jako sam uživao u njemu, kao i onaj sa Žarkom Ilićem od pre par nedelja. I want to say hello to everyone. Thank you for joining this live tonight. Another episode on the self-mastery project, and I'm very excited to speak to Shervin again. We are going to deep dive into nutrition tonight, and Shervin is going to break it all down for us. We're going to talk about alkaline pH in the body versus acidic. We're going to talk about inflammation. What does cause inflammation in our body? How do we actually get it? How do we get rid of it? Is inflammation natural? Should we stop inflammation process? Should we allow it to happen? Should we join forces? Should we moderate it? We're going to talk about protein, carbs, fat. We're going to talk about the ratio of these three. What diets are good or not good, or what kind of metabolic processes are happening when we consume specific food. We're going to talk about also some supplementation. We're going to talk about different climates and different parts of the world and how does that affect the nutrition, obviously the body temperature and so forth. And we're going to talk about sports nutrition as well, a little bit for all the athletes that are online, that are going to watch this, whether it's live or whether it's afterwards. I think, it would be very useful also for me. There's always something to learn, and I'm also going to, of course, be sharing my own journey with nutrition and something that I've already written about in the book Serve to Win, that was published in 2013. And so a lot has changed since then. So we're going to try to get into the nutrition and my own journey, and Shervin is going to share the science behind it and his own journey, and hopefully you guys can maybe take something away that can be beneficial for your health and for just overall consciousness of health and nutrition. Again, I have to say this before we start, because we're saying this every time, that this is our perspective. It's, of course, we are sharing, and we're taking our time and investing energy into trying to share with all of you guys what we have been through, what has positively affected us, what has maybe negatively affected us on our health and our nutrition, or our mind, body, and soul connection. And obviously, we are not preaching, we are not throwing things out there that everyone should follow or should do. Everybody has the right and freedom to choose what they want to follow, what they want to do, and the concepts and the diets they want to follow. So I respect that, and hopefully you will respect also my decision to do this, and I do it from, I assure you, best intentions. Okay, so I'm going to invite Shervin in. Shervin, if you're there, please just text me in this chat so I can invite you in the live. Svima veliki pozdrav, hvala. Lepo je vidjeti toliko naših ljudi. Nadam se da ćete ostati da gledate ovaj live i na engleskom jeziku. A bit će i prevoda, to jest bit će i ovih verzija na našem jeziku vrlo brzo. Okay, so where is Shervin? I'm trying to find him. Where are you, bro? Oh, here he is. Okay.
Hey.
Aho.
Aho, brother.
Good to see you, bro. Thanks for coming in.
Too. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't have my Mickey t-shirt on. I understand that some people disliked my Mickey shirt, but it's one of my favorite, my kids' favorite shirts, so that's why I was wearing it.
Hey,
but I'm going simple. I'm going simple this time. Check it out. I'm going simple. The little croc is here. That's all. You're always sleeveless. Why is that? Are you showing your guns or what?
Yeah. Is that Rafael Nadal? He's wearing sleeveless.
Rafael Nadal has got probably slightly stronger arms than you, but you're right there.
Well, yeah. So so I'm bringing out the competition in you.
Yeah. You're inspiring me, man. So I'm gonna switch off the comments. I'm gonna turn them off so we can focus on conversation. And then, of course, as we usually do, for anybody joining now, we're going to turn on the comments as we come close to our live, close to the end of our live. And then, of course, we're going to answer your questions. So, brother, thanks for joining in. I've done the introduction. I've said that, what are the kind of topics and elements of health and nutrition we are going to focus on tonight or today for you. And we are going to deep dive into nutrition. We're going to talk about alkaline versus acidic, inflammation, protein, carbs, fats. What do those represent? The metabolic processes of how do we use the energy between the organs, between the cells. The sports nutrition, that's something very interesting. I think there's a lot of athletes that are on the live and they're going to watch the videos. I think that will be very interesting to talk about as well. So let's start. First things first. What is alkaline? What is acidic pH? What is the balance between the two? Where should we be for our optimal health?
Okay, so I think first and foremost, everyone's different in terms of their stage in life, where they're at. You are a world-class athlete. And some people are looking to just be healthy their entire lives and they're keeping at a steady pace. And I've told you that before. It just really depends on what your goals are for that moment while considering the long run, right? So we don't want to completely deplete ourselves by building our bodies up just for one moment, but we want to keep it even keel. And that's where acidosis and alkalinization comes in handy and where we can relate back to it. Mm-hmm. I've told you before, fruits, plants, anything in that area are catabolic by nature. What does that mean? They break things down in the body. They're detoxifying. They hydrate the body. They give you minerals. They give you nutrients. And then in the animal kingdom, because I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this, people get animal products. Those are anabolic by energy, which means they build the body up. And they cause toxins to happen in the body at a more rapid rate than plants and fruits. That being said, the alkalinization and acidic scale goes from 0 to 14. Okay, and so the body's natural, pH where we want to be at is somewhere around 7.4. That's the healthy, equilibrium homeostasis line for interstitial acidosis and alkalization. It's very important to understand that that's our baseline. And that's the baseline in our cell. And 7.4 stands for percentage of hydrogen or parts per hydrogen. It's how much hydrogen is actually in the cell. And believe it or not, we need to be acid in our body. There's certain functions in our body that needs to have acid. Our saliva, our gut.
Because our stomach, for example, our gut, right? We got to have the
hydrochloric acid.
That breaks down the food.
Correct. So we don't want to demonize acids.
Yeah.
We just want to understand how the body works. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so at the center of the cell, the pH is going to be somewhere around 7.4. And on the edge of the cell, it's going to be somewhere around 4. And it's that polarization, right? And our system, our entire body works on positive and negative charge. It's that polarization that creates a heartbeat, right? That's an electrical impulse. So we want to have polarization in our body, and we want to know how to supplement the body so there's a steady balance. The problem is that in today's modern mechanistic world, we're eating so much processed foods. Anything that has a label on it with ingredients and supplement facts, that's a processed food. ISO-related ingredients that are put together is a processed food. Majority of processed foods are acid-forming foods. What does that mean? It means the body has to develop acids just to break it down. It's not ease and grace. If you're going to eat a fruit, in nature, the body really easily assimilates that fruit. That's why I break my fast breakfast with fruit. Fruit is the most important thing to eat first thing when you're breaking your fast every day. So we got to understand how the body works and how the detoxifying centers of the body works. And I think we got into it a little bit on the last live, where we were talking about the kidneys and the adrenal glands and the lymphatic system. The lymph system is the pump that pulls all the toxins out of the body. And if your body is stagnated because it's been working overtime trying to break down super complex sugars, okay, for example, we have a monosaccharide and we have polysaccharides. Monosaccharides means just what it is, simple sugar. Polysaccharides means something that's complex, okay? And the same thing with proteins. When you're eating meat, those are complex amino chain acids that the body has to break down. A protein is a composition of amino acids. So the more complicated they are, the more work the body has to do. And if you have a stagnated lymph system, meaning your body's ability to detoxify is not working properly, you're just compounding the problem. And after 5, 10 years, 20 years of this, all of a sudden your body goes from being alkaline, having a center point of 7.4, it starts dropping into acidity. Most people that are obese or have cancers or other forms of disease, their blood levels have a high level of toxemia, which is toxins in the blood, and their acidosis, they're higher in the acid charts. That's a fact. You can test people's acidity through saliva, first thing on the rise. So what we want to do is we want to create a balanced system, and we want to know how we got there in the first place. What are foods in nature that we should be consuming on a daily basis? What kind of water should we be drinking? How do we hydrate ourselves properly? All of those things. And as you know, I take that stuff very seriously. I don't drink water at restaurants. I don't let them put ice in my restaurants. I take my water from my house that I put through a 12-stage filtration system, and I'm getting it from spring water. I take that stuff very, very seriously. I don't allow anyone in my house to drink, water that hasn't been gone through our system. That's how serious I take it. And it's the same thing with the way we got to recognize our food and how we can start getting there before the inflammation starts. Now, you mentioned inflammation when we first started off, because that word inflammation is being thrown around everywhere. It's being touted now as the precursor to all diseases. And there's different forms of inflammation. Let me just run off the top of my head, because our body has different markers for inflammation. And to give everyone an example, and I want to keep it at a slow, steady pace, if you bang your wrist while playing tennis, or you hit it on the ground, or one of those patented slides that you do, you hit your knee, what happens? It gets swollen, right? You feel the burn, it gets swollen. That's your body's acute inflammation process to go and heal that area because something has happened to a joint or a shoulder or a muscle, or if you get stung by a bee or anything. What is that? That's the body's ability to turn white blood cells and growth factors and send blood and nutrients to that area to protect it, to repair it, and to get it back to where it's supposed to be. If we didn't have that, we would fall apart in an instant.
So basically, inflammation is a natural response of the,
correct,
of the body. Yeah.
It's an acute response system. We call that acute.
So should we help the body, or kind of aid the body to not by not eliminating or not stopping or not causing hindrance to the inflammation? Because in the sports world, we talked about it in the last live, we touched upon it very shortly. We put ice on the joint, right? Yeah. So is that a correct way to deal with that? Because inflammation, as you said, is thrown around a lot in the sports, especially in the sports medicine. Sure. You know, inflammation is something that you should not have, like get rid of the inflammation right away. Where on the other hand, what I've heard as well is that, you know, and what I've been following with my team, because at the first stage of my career, I was putting a lot of ice on my joints, especially if I say, you know, sprain my ankle or something like that. But then in the last 6-7 years, I haven't been not putting ice on my joints at all. I have actually been trying to help body increase even more inflammation, so increase the, so to say, the delivery of all these nutrients in that place which needs healing, so that the way I've understood, of course, is that the healing process is shorter. So you increase the recovery time. Whereas if you put an ice, you do decrease the inflammation instantly, but the healing process takes longer.
Right. Yeah. So I'm right down the middle of that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Because ice has its positives. I think if you're getting into a continuous stage of a career where every time you're doing something, you're icing it back down, you could be causing some harm, right? There's certain moments where common sense will tell you, like, okay, this needs to be iced because if this expands anymore, it's going to cause more damage than it should. And we got to curtail it a little bit. And a good analogy is a fever, right? Yeah. The body's innate immune system reacts to a virus or flu or whatever by bringing on by heating up the body, right? And we don't want to interfere with that sometimes, because that's the body cooking out whatever that doesn't need to be there. And it's the same thing conversely with ice. I use ice on certain occasions where my instincts are telling me, look, this is a pretty gnarly injury. We need to constrict it a little bit right now, and then kind of let it repair on its own because it's too much. So I think that goes a little bit both ways. More importantly is taking anti-inflammatory drugs. You want to, you know, I'm not a big fan of that. I know, again, there's a time and place for anti-inflammatory drugs, but what are you doing? You're just basically masking the issue. You're not actually allowing the solution to be solved by the body by getting information there. And, you know, NSAIDs, anti-inflammatory drugs, those things are really toxic on the liver. We know that. That's science. That's, you know, doctors are talking about that all the time. So we want to be very careful with how we use that. I know a lot of professional athletes, a lot of people in the collegiate sports that I know are using those. They were using things called Turidol, which is a very strong anti-inflammatory drug. What we're doing there is we're masking the body's ability to actually solve the issue. And so the acute injuries, you've got to go with your instincts. You know, if you sprain your ankle, it's not a bad idea to put it in a bucket of ice, because it's about to expand and you want to bring that swelling down. But that's not something you want to be doing all the time. You want to elevate it, you want to ice it immediately, and then you want to get nutrients to it. You don't want to, this isn't something that you start doing consistently if it's that big of an injury. And so these are acute situations, and I'm using that as a metaphor on how the body reacts to a quick reaction problem that's happened. Now, conversely, the age of inflammation that we're in right now, we're talking about runaway chronic inflammation. Okay, runaway chronic inflammation is basically the best way I can explain that is it's a silent inflammation, and it's running on a very low grade level, and we don't even notice it. And we could have low grade chronic inflammation for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and the whole time our body is in a state of flux. And what happens is the communication of the inflammation centers aren't shutting down. And why aren't they shutting down? Because of a number of reasons. Because we have toxic overloads in our body, we got viruses in our body, we got bacteria, we got heavy metals, interstitial acidosis, all of these things, toxins that have accumulated from our environment. Our body's lymph system isn't properly forming, and from there, you can see these. And the science community has named these inflammation markers. We have C-reactive protein. I think everybody's heard of C-reactive protein. We have TNF alpha, which is tumor necrotic or tumor necrosis factor alpha. We have interleukin markers. We have cyclogenesis. We have, there's a couple more. Eicosanoids, different inflammation markers that you can now do blood tests and see what ranges you fall into. And we have to be very, very present to what those inflammation markers are telling us. I always tell people the first thing you want to do is go get an inflammation test so we can see where your body is humming at. Because we're not talking about that acute inflammation anymore. We're talking about a consistent flow of degradation and pain in the body, and the body is always staying in that system. And what happens when you're in that? You basically start to break down, and premature aging, metabolic diseases, chronic fatigue syndrome. Then you have a whole host of autoimmune issues, which is basically, what does autoimmune mean? Autoimmune means the immune system is attacking your own body. Well, how did we get there in the first place? And instead of taking a drug to try to mask that symptom of feeling that fibromyalgia or that celiac disease or whatever it is, Hashimoto's, all of those things, why don't we start getting to the root on how we got there in the first place? And the root is our diet. It's our nutrition. It's the way we sleep every night. It's the way that we think. It's the way that we operate. It's our mindset. All of these things play a factor. We now know stress, cortisol, is one of the main causes of a lot of these issues. But they all go together. It's not one thing or the other. And then so for our diet and nutrition, we really got to focus on eating whole foods. I know that's been said all the time, but we got to stay away from processed as much as possible. Processed is not what our bodies are designed to eat. We're supposed to be eating seasonal food. You mentioned that earlier. We're supposed to be going with the season when the pollination occurs wherever we are, whatever hemisphere we're in. So I always advise people, get in sync with the season. Get in sync with your farmers, local farmers. Support them. When we're eating seasonally, we're supporting the local economic situation as well, because we're not dealing with importers that are importing from other hemispheres just to give you nutrition and to sell that. We got to get back to the basics. We got to get back to soil science. We got to get back to mineralization. We got to understand how vitamins work in the body. We got to also know about frequency in terms of timing in eating. One of the main questions I get from a lot of your people and a lot of my people in the athlete world is that when's the best time to eat? Yeah. When are we eating nutrition? When are we eating fruits? When are we eating those things? I always say it just depends on your life. Someone like you, I say, you get up on the rise, you hydrate, you drink clean water, you drink minerals, your lymph system starts to move, you go to the bathroom, you detoxify immediately. The first food you should be eating is some type of fruit, possibly grapes, melon family. I love those because those families right there remove interstitial acidosis. They're detoxifiers. They push the lymph to move. And then from there, you can go into your first basic meal. It could be greens, it could be sprouts, it could be anything like that. And when you get done with a vicious workout, hardcore training, that's probably the best time also to eat fruit after, to replenish your glycogen stores, and you can get back into a balance. And then from there, you go into your main meal of the evening. So there's so many layers that we can go into understanding what proteins are, what insulin is in the body, polysaccharides, all of those different things. all of it goes together, and it could sound complicated, but it's so basic once you understand how the digestion system works and how we've gone awry in the modern world. And it's not, these aren't even things to argue. This is coming from the science and the literature of how the human body works, how the human body breaks down food, how it passes through the gut into the intestinal tract, how it's absorbed through the epithelial layer. And another thing is a lot of people are having a lot of gut problems, right? And they're having dysbiosis of the gut or leaky gut. What is that? What is leaky gut? Why does leaky gut go into autoimmune issues or food allergies? It's basically, you know, your body's not able to break down the food properly because you have the wrong, the microbiome is off in the gut, which is a big part of digestion. There's something like, let me give you an example. There's something called intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is in our gut. It allows our body to properly absorb vitamin B12. Without intrinsic factor, we can't absorb methylcobalamin properly. So there's so many things that we have to get to the center of, and then we can start worrying about all the other stuff. But we got to really figure out how this system works.
Beautifully said. I mean, there's, yeah, as you said, you know, there's a lot to go into, and
Really is.
you know, it's hard to cover everything in one live, obviously. But I think maybe you can reflect a little bit on the balance and the need of a body for minerals and vitamins. And I think, where are those minerals and vitamins? Does our body produce minerals and vitamins? You know, how do we go about that?
Yeah, so minerals comes before everything. We are compositely made of minerals. You know, you're basically calcium, and we got so much magnesium in our body. Minerals are from the earth. Minerals are what program vitamins and nutrients to do what they're supposed to be doing in the body. Zinc, for example, is at the center point of our immune system. It helps us develop hormones as men. There's so many different angles. Ultimately, or originally, we're supposed to be getting all our minerals from the foods that we eat, right? And it comes from the soil. And, you know, 150 years ago in America, and I'll just speak for America, and I bet it's the same thing for worldwide because I know these statistics, everybody had a direct contact or correct connection to the food that they ate, meaning either they grew it or their neighbor grew it or their relatives across the street grew it. Today, less than 1/4% of the population here has any connection to their food, okay? Now, for some people, they immediately hear that and they're like, wow, they can actually see what a big deal that is. Other people may not make the connection, so let me make the connection for you. Not only today are we getting demineralized food because we are not growing our own food and we're not putting the energy into the soil in terms of composting, creating soil science, nutrients, the right fertilizers, all of that kind of stuff, permaculture, those things. But our energy is not going into the land anymore, you know, and that's a big difference. That's a big deal. And that's why we're having so many issues with our food supply. Now it's become an industrial revolution where our foods are being grown by large farms that are monocropping everything. I'm talking acres and acres of the same food, like strawberries or romaine lettuce, and they're doing that every single season. What do you get when you do that? You get basically basically denatured food that's lacking the nutrients needed that our body requires, that our system requires these nutrient-dense foods. That's why when, you know, for example, when I go to our farm in Kauai, right, and I'm eating the food on that land, I don't need a lot of food. I eat a small portion of fruit and salad, and I'm full. Because it's nutrient dense. And then let me give you an example. A lot of people eat big, huge meals, you know, of like fast food or things that they get at restaurants, big extravagant meals. And then 2-3 and right after they eat it, they're like so tired because the body has to go to war basically to break all that down. And then 2 hours later, they're hungry again. Why is that? Anyone listening to me knows what I'm talking about. You can go eat empty calories and all of a sudden your body's craving nutrition. It's because the food is not mineral and nutrient dense and doesn't hold the amount of fiber we need to keep us moving and keep us regular. We're basically a constipated nation and a constipated world. That's a fact. Not only are we constipated, but we're dehydrated too at the cell at a really grossly level. And this is all backed up by medical science. This isn't some big conspiracy. This is the truth. I'm just talking about getting people healthier. And so when it comes to minerals and vitamins and nutrition, Mother Nature, provides it for us. The problem is that commercial food farming has removed and denatured that. We're not using the right types of plant agriculture soil composites. We're using artificial fertilizers called NPK, which is nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. Those things are wreaking havoc on our ecosystems. They're wreaking havoc on our food, and they're creating interstitial acidosis in the human body, where we're becoming, less saturated in the nutrients that we need. And that's why we have to go to supplementation. Supplementation has basically been the key to order to get these nutrients. Now, we're not designed to be eating supplements. So if you're going to supplement, just make sure you use your due diligence and find the right ones that work for you. We're designed to be eating healthy food that gets broke down in the gut, protein, fats, and carbs. And what's a carb? A carb is carbon mixed with an oxygen. That's why it's a carbohydrate. And a calorie, let me do the basics. What is a calorie? A calorie is a unit of measure that was basically supposed to heat up 1 gram per centigrade of water. That's what a calorie means. So let's learn what these words are. We're so stuck in this modern mechanistic world where we're just reading things. We don't even know what they are. Let's get to the chemistry. I want the science of all this, of how the human body works. Once we get the basics, and the information's out there, like I want to ask everyone listening, where are you getting your information on how the human body works? Who's teaching you? Is it something you saw on a television show? Are you reading chemistry books? Are you reading biology books? Are you just Googling it? Like, the information is there. It's not complicated. You don't have to be behind a lab with a PhD coat. Those doctors are available for us to teach us information. That's where I learned a lot of my information, is being around doctors, being around scientists, being around health practitioners. That's the lifestyle that I've grown up in. And it's getting to the basics of all of the fundamental science of how the human body works. And from there, once you get the basics down, then you can start going into things like Ayurveda, things like traditional Chinese herbal medicine, things like soil science, things like top level of mineralization. Then we can get into antioxidants and understand what an antioxidant is and what free radical damage is and why we need certain antioxidants. Blueberries, like why are blueberries so healthy for you? What makes them the color blue? What is that pigment called? Phycocyanin. Why is blue so powerful in nature? Why is it the rarest color? You know what I mean? So there's layers and layers and layers and layers that we can go. And I think fundamentally, just understanding how the body digests food, absorbs the food, and then eliminates the food is the key component at the center of it all. And really making choices.
Would you agree as well that what I found in my own experience is that knowing also the timetable of the functions of each organ, like essential organs, and when they peak, when is their time within the 24-hour table, is also quite important in order to adjust your feeding time, your consumption of specific food to aid that organ, to whether it's liver, whether it's going to detoxify, or kidneys.
Right.
Is that something that people should also look into?
Absolutely. It's not some crazy concept.
So what are the fundamentals? You would say the fundamentals are
kidneys. Kidney function is, I think, at the center point, because that regulates so much in our body. Okay. The kidneys are basically the the battery and the backbone of pushing toxins out of our body. They regulate potassium and sodium in the body. And on top of the kidneys are your adrenal glands. And we are just starting to figure out what these adrenals actually do. It's so much more than just the basic thoughts of the adrenal system. And they govern so many things. They're part of so much metabolic function. They're part of hormone production. They're part of so many different things. They sustain us. They keep us at a consistent level. So I think the kidneys are really critical. Also understanding how the heart works and what homeocysteine levels mean in the heart. So anyone listening, I think it's always good to go get your homeocysteine levels test. Homeocysteine is an amino acid that's a byproduct of certain things. And if your homeocysteine levels are high, you could be in subject of certain things. Making sure that your liver is properly functioning. If you are a alcohol drinker and you drink consistently and you basically cross the threshold of certain daily limits of alcohol, you're burdening the liver. The liver has to metabolize the alcohol. There's so many different things that you really want to be on top of it. You want to know what herbs to take that nourish the liver, that nourish the adrenal system. There's so many different avenues of Ayurveda that's involved, that's combined with mainstream science. Mainstream science now is advocating certain ways of detoxifying the body. I can go on and on. Like, we know that the liver is part of the body that creates, it heats up the body. So if the theme is frustration and anger, you could have an overactive liver. Just go get blood work done and see if you have overactive enzymes in the body. I always say, talk to the doctor and find a doctor that understands the body fully as a whole, as opposed to just an isolated look.
There's one thing that you said, which I think is is very important, that I would highlight, is that when you're not eating food that is not nutrient dense, then obviously you're eating food that is demineralized and that is created in this industrial revolution, obviously. Yeah. So that in a way obliges you to look into the supplementation, because you have to help your body in some way, right, to get all the nutrients and all the substances that are necessary for optimal metabolic function, right?
That's correct, absolutely.
So how does someone who lives a modern life and doesn't have opportunity right now where they are with their life to grow their own food or get access to the farmers? Because I mean, that's a good one, because a lot of people say, well, we don't, a lot of people have a concern because healthy food is expensive, quality supplements are expensive. And, we live in the world where, there's obviously, with this coronavirus situation, economy is breaking down. People are not willing to spend few more dollars on a supplement or quality food because they just have more important things. What would your communication be with them? How would you advise them to go about their nutrition?
Well, you got to get to the basics. It's start with the basics. If you can't afford an extra dollars on organic food or anything like that, start looking and seeing what it is that you have been eating. Okay, and start eliminating things that are actually really, really evident that they're toxifying, that they're very toxic to the human body. So process of elimination first. So before we go down this list of, okay, I need to add this, I need to add that, I need to add that, let's just do a current review of what we've been doing for the last 90 days, right? Because if you really look at it, most people are kind of eating the same thing every day. If you take someone's snapshot, they did a test on this. They did a poll and they asked, I don't know how many people. Most people eat the same thing every day. They might not realize it, but if you span it on a course of like a month, they're consistently eating the same foods. So first and foremost, see what foods you're eating and really evaluate, like, okay, where is this coming from? How is it made? What are the ingredients in it? Are most of the ingredients in this things that you've never heard before and you can't pronounce? Are they chemistry words that sound like man-made compounds? Are there dyes in it? Are there, natural flavors in, which is something else you want to always avoid? Natural flavors could be all kinds of stuff. So start looking and seeing what you're consuming and start removing that from your diet. And what you can replace it with, I mean, I have to say this, if you can't find fruit around you, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you have to be able to find fruit. And even if it's not the most biodynamic organic fruit, that's better than eating a processed food that comes in a box that you have to microwave.
But there's a lot of, you actually talking about the fruit. I think that's an important one, because I personally eat a lot of fruit, especially in the first part of the day, especially in morning hours or early afternoon.
Yeah.
And obviously there is this theory or understanding around through different diet promotions and so forth, that the fruit is in a large quantity is harmful because of the sugar glycemic levels, right? So can you reflect on that a little bit? Because there's a lot of myths around fruit, that fruit is not good, because I think from my personal experience and observation that a lot of people mix up the sugar that you get from the fruit with a processed sugar that you get from the actual refined sugar. So it's not the same sugar, right? I mean,
That's
maybe
correct.
we can say a few words about that.
Yeah, so I don't sit around and eat fruit all day, okay? If I was living a sedentary lifestyle as well, what does sedentary mean? It means where I'm not moving around and I'm just sitting there. If I just sit there and eat fruit all day, that's going to become a problem. Fruit is hydrating. It's detoxifying, okay? And there's many different kinds of fruit. For example, pineapple is super acidic. I rarely eat pineapple because it's so acid forming. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's filled with bromelain.
But that doesn't mean it's bad.
It doesn't mean that it's bad.
It just depends for your body type, right?
Depends on your body type, and it depends on the timing, and it depends on many things. We got to get a little bit like ninja-like here when it comes to our food. We can't take this for granted and just be running around aimlessly eating things. We got to be a little bit targeted. So, for example, certain fruits have a high glycemic count. Some have a low glycemic count. What does that mean? That means your body's ability to respond to it with insulin because of the amount of simple sugars it has. So the higher glycemic, the more insulin the pancreas has to produce to balance off your blood sugar, right? And so when we eat higher glycemic foods, we need to eat them around times where our glycogen has been completely depleted, right? Which is why, you can eat citrus while you're working out or after you work out. I like I said before, I eat low glycemic fruit, berries, melons, grapes, things like that. Grapes are a little bit higher glycemic, but they're super detoxifier. I eat those on the rise. Those are my breaking my fast, breakfast. And then other fruits I eat after I train, after I hit the gym, after I work out. So it's timing, it's utilization, it's things like that. Fruits get a bad name mainly from, the high fat community that are doing like, ketosis and living in that reality. And I don't necessarily have a problem with the keto diet. I just think keto was designed for people that were morbidly obese and they had to drop that weight and their body had to start producing ketones. So it uses fat as an energy source, as a metabolic driver, as opposed to a carbohydrate, which is carbon, right?
Yes.
And so it's everyone's different. Everyone's body type's different. You can go through cycles. My advice is do what makes sense to you and do what works for you. If you are in an area where you have access to clean fruit, then you're stoked. Then you're awesome. This is the best ever. Time it right. If you don't have access to clean fruit, so now we got to look for a different source for energy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And we got to do it properly. And when it comes to, hey, are you vegan? Are you carnivore? Are you a frutivore? you know, are you paleo, all those things. I get that question asked all the time. And I don't run from it. I'm very straightforward with it. I personally am a qualitarian. Okay, and what does that mean is that I only focus on things that I know that are of quality and that work for my body. And I'm an experimenter. I try things. I find things that work for me. I'm pretty much 90%, 95% plant-based. And the 5% that I get from animal sources like ghee, which is clarified butter that I get from A2 cows from India, or bee products, or sometimes local egg yolks, things like that. I have no problem saying that. Those work for me. They work for my system. I try them out. It's all trial and error. Nobody can tell you what to do or put pressure on what to do. I make choices based on my heart and my body's ability to feel it out. It's so important. And I also have a conscious state where I know that, for example, commercial meat agriculture is terrible in our world. It's a terrible atrocity what's happening to animals right now on that level. When it's not when they're not involved with care and love and support, and it's become this industry, and the amount of damage it's doing to our nature. We know that. We've seen Cowspiracy. We know those guys very well. I'm a supporter of a plant-based, you know, movement. I'm also a supporter of doing things the biodynamic way, of creating balance in the human body and a balance in nature. And so, yeah.
Sorry, but
No.
why is it good to, or is it important to have our leafy greens every day? Yeah, are you back? You okay?
I'm here. There you are.
I thought this question surprised you a little bit.
No.
No,
Because
my question was, is it important to have leafy greens every day? And if so, why?
yeah, well, dark leafy green. What is that? So that's spinach, that's romaine lettuce, that's red leaf lettuce, that's kale, all of those things. Absolutely, those are powerhouses of nutrients. I mean, it's basically, the more bitter it is, the better it is. Okay, so remember, bitter is better. Our body wants bitters. It's like an herbal Ayurvedic message as well. The reason why I eat a lot of dark leafy greens is because I know where it's grown, and I know how much chlorophyll and iron and minerals and, you know, manganese and magnesium, all of the minerals. The green leafy vegetables are basically sponges and brings that all up. Also, they act as a prebiotic, right? So we always talk about probiotics, but it's a prebiotic. It's a prebiotic to our gut. It creates energy and synthesis in the gut, and it acts as a fuel for all the healthy bacteria in our gut. In our gut, so we're not going into dysbiosis and something's not feeding off each other. It creates a great balance. I like to add a little bit of acids to my green leafy vegetables and a little bit of oil, mainly avocado oil or olive oil. And when I say acids, I mean basically lemons from my yard or a little bit of apple cider vinegar, especially with things like kale, right? Kale is a tough fibrous food. And so the more we can start the digestion process outside of the mouth and gut, the better. I always massage my salads and I let them sit for at least 10, 15 minutes, kale even longer when it's with the apple cider vinegar or lemon. It's really, really good. It's important.
Awesome. The last question before we move into the questions from the people that are watching this is how do different climates affect nutrition? You know, obviously the temperatures in LA or West Coast or San Diego where you are right now, most of the year you have really good climate. I mean, you know, a lot of variety of fruits and vegetables throughout the entire year. But someone living in Scandinavia or somewhere up on the where it's very cold up in the north, how
Sure.
do they you know, deal with that? What are the things that you would recommend them to eat?
Well, there's pros and cons to living in a mild climate. One of the pros is that we have access to a lot of fruits and vegetables because it's easy to grow it here. And we're also in an urban area, so there's a lot of commerce here economically. So you're getting things from all over the place. But even if I go to a local Whole Foods here, you know, 70% of the fruits and vegetables are coming from South America. They're coming from Central America, right? And so what does that mean? So I really like places that have extreme weather. Why? Because whatever's grown there during that time is powerful. It's fierce, right? It had to make it through the winter, right? It had to go and it had to be strong in order to do so, especially wildcrafted stuff. You know, so if you're in Scandinavia, you know, you're eating certain things in Scandinavia that are time tested, that are powerful, that have the jing, have the energy, have all those kinds of things like that. Whenever I'm in Canada, when I'm in Northern Ontario, you know, these are higher latitudes. Like, just for example, the sea buckthorn that's grown up there, one of the most powerful berries in the world. I am immediately, when I go there, I eat them to a frenzy. Or the blackberry. Blackberry is another fruit that grows in northern climates. Here in the west coast of America, you have basically Oregon, Washington State, and then Vancouver. We call that the Pacific Northwest. And in the Pacific Northwest, everything you're eating there is pretty much wild crafted. So the blackberries are growing everywhere and they go berserk, right? They're like unbelievable and they're fierce. So you kind of take on that like fierceness, and that's where you get all the flavonoids and phytonutrients and all the things and that you want to take in your own body. Also medicinal mushrooms like chaga, reishi, turkey tail, king trumpet, all those things. Those are wild adaptogenic stuff that are growing in the wild. But to break it down, if you're living in certain places where you're not getting certain nutrition, start researching and seeing, because something is growing there. There's something in the ocean, there's something on the beach, there's something in the mountains, there's something there that's intrinsic to your locale. And you got to get on that, because there's a reason why it's growing there, and there's a reason why you're from there. There's this power to that, right? It's not a spiritual thing. It's just a common sense thing. Like the Native Americans, they knew exactly which cactus to eat. The Native Americans knew exactly which, what fruit could grow here, what herbs to grow here. The same thing with Central America, the same thing with Mexico, the same thing with Canadians, the same thing with the Mayans, all over the world, the Persians, all of them. Pomegranate, right? Pomegranate is what's growing like crazy in Iran, right? All these different things. We got to just know what's in our locale, especially if our bloodline is from there. Absolutely.
Wonderful, brother. Thanks for sharing all these things today. Very educational, very informative, really an eye-opener on many things. So I'm just going to turn on the commenting, and I'm going to ask
one last thing is methylation. You've heard me talk about methylation before. Methylation is somewhat become kind of like a new concept. It's been around. Our body has a cycle. It's called the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. Mm-hmm. This is how our cells replicate. This is how our cells decide which cell should die through apoptosis, or which ones should be, recreated, and mitosis. We learned that like in 4th or 5th grade. Methylation is the body's ability to detoxify. Now, what we know now through science and through new modern healthcare is that a lot of people have methylating impairment, and that's called the MTHFR gene mutation, which stands for methylation tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme. And everyone can go get tested to know where they stand if they carry a variant of that gene mutation. If you have that gene mutation, it doesn't matter about how much green juice you drink or what kind of detoxing you do. It means your cell is having trouble detoxifying. It's very important to know that. And if you have that methylation issue, you can have cognitive issues, mental issues, emotional problems. Children that are having methylation issues are sometimes considered to be on the spectrum of autism. There's so many different things. This is modern science. And The way to go around that is we want to make sure that we're eating methylating foods like sprouts, anything that has sulfur in it, broccoli sprouts, B12, methylcobalamin, instead of folic acid, L-methylfolate. These are things that encourage and help the body to detoxify at the cellular level. And that's one of the most important things to do.
Thank you, brother.
Yes,
so
sir.
we got some of the questions here. Thank you guys for your patience and for your questions as well. So we got the first one from profile named Tanish Mahesh. Thank you so much. What foods help in recovery of the muscular and central nervous system?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. I mean, that can go right across the board. Healthy fats and amino acids. Healthy fats encourage the central nervous system to balance out, right? So what's a healthy fat? Avocado, right? So avocado should be one of the main things that you'd be eating to calm the central nervous system down. Ghee is another one, right? I really like ghee. I would say, are you vegetarian? Are you a meat eater? If you're a meat eater, then you're going to want to have grass-fed, meats, things like that for proper repair, especially if you're exercising and you're, an athlete. Chlorella, spirulina, hemp protein, that combination with glutamine would help you tremendously. Proper mineralization. Those are the keys to repair for a body that's been put through the test. If you're doing grueling workouts or you live a tough life.
What about nuts and seeds?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are very acid forming. Okay. They create a lot of acid in the body. So let's understand the common sense of what that means. Why are they acid forming? Because they're so difficult to break down. Does that make sense, everybody? That's why meat is acid forming, because it's a very complex protein that's made up of amino acids. And in order for the body to break down that protein, it has to break it up into different parts of amino acids. That process causes acidosis in the body. It's the same thing with nuts. So what are you going to do to soften the blow on that? You're going to sprout them. You're going to soak them. Okay. Yes. What does that mean? That means that you basically germinate the seed. And so pumpkin seeds, almonds, cashews, anything like that. If you really are into that stuff, you got to sprout them. And if you're into drinking almond milk or plant-based milk, which is great, don't go to the store and buy it. Make your own. You can Google it right now, how to make your own almond milk, how to make your own cashew milk. And it's an awesome, awesome thing to do. And just the power of the alchemy of making things in your kitchen and knowing that you are the spark to create that is so enjoyable. It's so much love. You do it with your family and friends. Best ever.
Absolutely. We at home, we have a kind of a habit to always have kind of nuts and seeds around the house. My kids like to eat cashews and also some pumpkin seeds. But we soak them for about 2, 3, 4 hours, and then we maybe put them in the oven shortly, so they're a little bit crunchy, and they're a bit kind of more interesting, or so to say, tastier to eat.
So I would soak them. I would soak them for at least a day.
Oh, at least a day. Okay.
At least a day, and then oven roast them a little bit and put some sea salt on it, and then you could put other spices on there as well. And for men, pumpkin seed is your best friend. I eat a handful of sprouted pumpkin seeds every single day. Women too, but for men, I mean, that's like, that's zinc, right? Zinc goes straight to where it's supposed to go for a man.
A question from BV21 official. Thank you for your question. Is there a basic way to keep the kidneys and liver clean with food?
Yes, herbs and fruit. That's it. So you want to be taking things like ashwagandha and holy basil, and there's a lot of herbs out there specifically. So you just go on Google and type in detoxifying herbs. Start drinking herbal teas, okay? And stop eating processed foods. things that are acid forming cause a burden to your kidneys and your lymph system. That in combination, so fruit, good hydration, and herbs mixed with workouts that you and I talked about. I just posted a story earlier of me inverting on the yoga swing out there. Inversions, jumping, exercising, vibration plate, which is now backed by medical science. All of those things get the kidneys and get the lymph system moving. Remember, our heart has a pump. Our heart is pushing blood, which is filled with oxygen and nutrients, all over the body. The lymph does not have a pump. The kidneys are pushing lymph, which is a fluid. We need exercise and movement to get that going.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a lot of people asking about intermittent fasting. I think you shared a little bit last week in your live, but can you just, shortly reflect on that again, please?
Yes. So I do intermittent fasting. I've been doing intermittent fasting for over 15 years. It just works for me. It makes sense. And the concept behind it is that just thinking about food can start the digestion process, right? Think of it like if you smell food, if you smell a lemon, saliva starts to activate, hydrochloric acid starts to happen. Just the breakdown, the metabolic breakdown or metabolization of food is so complicated in the human body. There's so many things that have to turn on and activate. I mean, everything. I can list them all off. It's crazy how much things have to go down. If we're doing that every day, 6-7 times a day for 50 years, we're causing a lot of metabolic waste and a lot of cellular turnover. It doesn't matter if it's fruit that's grown in a biodynamic farm in Kauai or it's processed hamburger from wherever, right? It still has to break down. Those things don't change. Some foods are easier to break down, of course, but it still causes a circus in the human body. So if we go chunks of time of not eating, we're allowing our body to start going into an area called autophagy or autophagy, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And that's an area where the body starts going and figuring out issues in the body, immune breakdowns, parasites in the body, viruses in the body, bacteria in the body, things like that. And it starts cycling and metabolizing those things. And we know now that one of the number one ways of anti-aging is caloric restriction. There's, I don't know how many published studies are on caloric restriction, which is another form of hormesis. Remember hormesis? That which does not kill you makes you stronger, which is why you did a live with Wim Hof, right? Why does he go into ice cold water? What does that do? That causes the body to naturally respond, right? If we're living sedentary lifestyles in 5-star hotels 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're very susceptible to disease and getting sick because our body's not being put to the test, right? That's why I jump. That's why I don't eat for 2 days sometimes. That's why I do intermittent fasting. That's why I shut down the body's ability to have to break down food 24/7. That's why we take cold showers. That's why we do so many different things. These are micro things that cause the body's immune system, the natural killer cells, the immune system to fire up. So that's intermittent fasting. So the way I intermittent fast, just so you know, I don't take in a calorie till about 12:30, 1 o'clock every single day, a calorie, right? So I do herbal drinks on the rise. I do all those things, but they're non-caloric. So around 12:30, 1 p.m. is when I have my first calorie. And then my calories stop around 7:30 p.m. here in Pacific Standard Time. So I have about a 7, 8, 9 hour window. I'm not crazy about it. I'm not like a soldier, you know what I mean? I have a good momentum going, and that's how we want to operate. We don't want to be like looking at our phones and having these calculators everywhere and all these different things. That's not natural. We want to get into the natural rhythm and the circadian rhythm of our biological clock, right? The sun, the moon, all those things.
Last 2 questions. Fine Food Affairs profile is asking, what is better, whole fruits, or fruit smoothies?
Whole fruits, hands down. Whole fruits. Your body. So when you talk about high glycemic and we talk about insulin response, that's why I'm not a fan of fruit juice. I don't drink fruit juice. I never drink fruit juice, ever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll drink green juice, which is just greens. I don't even put the apple in there anymore. It's just too much on the human body. We're not designed to be eating an onslaught of all of those monosaccharides, which is a simple form of sugar. Even if we can't do it. It's too much. So if you're going to have fruit.
So you're not putting even bananas in your smoothies?
Okay, so if I have a banana, it's a small amount. Just to get a little bit of that potassium, just to get a little bit of that texture.
2 bananas in there.
Well, you're great. Yeah, that could be too much. That could be causing a little bit of metabolic waste and a little bit too much. Absolutely. Yeah. We need to find you a good health coach.
Blame it on my health coach.
Yeah, I'll take responsibility. Well, you don't listen to me.
The last one is the protein and creatine as a sports supplementation.
Sure.
What is your take on that?
I love it. I love creatine. The only time you take creatine is if your body's kidneys are working, because creatine has to go through your kidneys, right? Creatine is basically, it creates cellular volumization with hydration. That's why if you take a lot of creatine, you bloat, right? Well, why is that? Because it's retaining water, and that retaining water allows more ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which we know is the energy center that's created through the mitochondria and cellular exchange. So creatine is great, but at the right amount and from the right source. And I would say most bodybuilders, people like that, they're taking upwards of 10 milligrams. How many? 10 grams a day. It's crazy. It's unbelievable how much they're taking. Micro amounts of creatine is good. It's also known to be a good nootropic, right? So it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and it's good for your brain as well. So, maybe 150, 200, 250, 300 milligrams of creatine per day. Just make sure your kidneys are functioning and make sure you're moving your body. You have to be sweating. You have to be active. You can't be stagnating and taking things like creatine. And then in terms of protein, that's the big question. How much protein should we be having? Should we follow the 40-30-30 play, which is, 40% carbohydrates, 30% protein, 30% fats, right?
Or another one, which is quite popular, is 80-10-10.
80-10-10, right? Don't get into any of that stuff. That's my personal opinion. You can only do what works for you. Once you understand how the human body works, like watch this video over and over, understand how the kidneys work, how the lymphatic system works, how acidosis works. Once you have all that and you're on the right level and you start really realizing how the human body works, then you can start looking at things like that and see how you can mold that into your lifestyle. Are you an athlete? Are you a weekend warrior? Are you working hard labor every single day? Are you sitting in an office typing in front of the computer? Are you sitting on your couch 12 hours a day? What kind of lifestyle do you live? And you got to go corresponding to your lifestyle.
So it's basically, first step is get some understanding, some awareness and education about how body works.
Yes.
Then detoxify yourself, and then you can start with various diets, experimenting and understanding what works for you best, right? Absolutely.
Like you can't jump ahead of it without having the roots ready. You can't. If someone asks me, hey, I've had some world-class athletes ask me, should I be eating, 6 ounces of steak every 2 days, like it's to build my muscles? And I can't tell them yes or no, but the first thing I tell them is your kidneys working? Because when you eat that steak, your body has to break that meat down. That meat is a complicated chain of amino acids. And in order for the body to break that down, it causes so much cellular and metabolic waste and acidosis. And if the kidneys aren't properly flushing, then you're just building and building and building toxins and toxins and toxins. So again, we got to get to optimal levels. Our center point of our body has to be in homeostasis before we can start thinking of things like that. And at the cornerstone of that is hydration, mineralization, fruits, herbs, lymphatic drainage, exercise, all of those things.
Last one, interesting one. Sherry Jolie asked the book recommendations on how the body works. Do you have any recommendations of the good reads?
I have so many, I wouldn't even know where to begin. How about this? I'll post a list of my top 5 books that will give you a good understanding or understanding of how the human body functions on all of these levels. How about that?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, brother.
Hey, it's an honor. Always, these are always so good, man. To be able to just teach one person makes my day. And I want to say this again. I always say it. We are just the messenger. This is just our perspective based on, you know, understanding things that we love and things that we do. That's the only point of everything that I do, is to really start looking deeper and deeper. And I always ask everybody, everything that you know today, where are you getting that information from? Where did that come from? Why do you think a certain way? Because your perception is your reality. And whatever you've seen on TV, whatever you've seen in the newspaper, whatever you see here, that's what's going to be telling you how things are. So I really ask you and implore you, start going deeper, because I need you, Novak needs you, the more of us that can come together in truth and awareness of how our bodies work, because my only goal is just for people to be happy and healthy. We should not be hitting chronic diseases in our mid-40s and 50s. We shouldn't be dealing with premature aging. We shouldn't be dealing with the high rate of cancers and emotional diseases and neurodegenerative diseases. It's unbelievable. The amount of neurodegenerative diseases that we're dealing as a nation and as a worldwide is becoming an epidemic. It's a scary thing. And I have so many friends whose parents are entering early on-stage dementia. You should see that. I get these messages every day from so many beautiful people. And that's why we're having these conversations. That's what it is. So
absolutely.
I honor you
so much, brother. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for also investing your time, energy, your knowledge, your willingness to share your wisdom and your experience with everyone. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. I certainly did. Of course, made my notes. Hope you did too. We'll repost this, of course, this live, so everyone can see it at any given time that is comfortable for them. Thank you so much.
I'll post my 5 favorite books. Books. Please do. And again, we're a family. This is a tribe. So it's an honor, everybody. I love you. Ashagatam in Farsi. Ashagatam.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Okay. Bye.